Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Green Arrow podcast brought to you by Fantasy Football Hub. Fergi, after 260 consecutive Green Arrows, is on holiday this week. So myself, Rich Clarke, is presenting the show. I'm quite nervous, but I've got two warm comfort blankets that have been on the show regularly in the past to support me today. So big welcome to Jian, Bartra, and BigManBakar. Welcome, guys. Looking forward to the show.
You can go first.
Thanks for having us.
That's all right.
Thanks
a lot. And thank you in the background, Scott, the producer, who's helped us out in terms of getting all the tech ready today and getting all the slides ready. So Scott's in the background helping us out, and hopefully we're going to have a great time this afternoon. We're really going to be focusing on wildcards this evening, whether or not you should wildcard this week. It's certainly been a massive week for pressing the button across the community, and we're obviously going to cover the wildcard scenario. But if you don't feel like wildcarding, or you've already played it and want to save it for later, we're going to cover those scenarios too. So without further ado, let's look at how last week went. I mean, you'll see that we don't have the greatest sets of ranks underneath our names at the moment as three content creators, but you know, we'll maybe get into the discussion as to why that might be. But Jian, maybe you could just talk us through your rather bold move last week and your game week 5. And thanks for coming on, mate. So how are you getting on?
No, first, it's a pleasure to always be back. And I think if we can get some love for Rich in the chat. I mean, always and ever present on Green Arrow, and I'm sure he'll do a great job as host. And now we can move on to my beautiful looking team. Well, obviously, last week, I thought there was an opportunity for Chelsea to do well against Manchester United and likewise Parma. Sanchez's Kung Fu made sure that wasn't really a possibility. And as such, my Cole Palmer captaincy resulted in a 1-pointer and a 2-pointer on the captain. In terms of the rank, like Rich said, we're obviously all not doing particularly well. I think at times I maybe have been a little bit too risky at times. I think I can accept that. Would I say that the decisions are completely warranting of a rank like this? Personally, I don't think so. But I can acknowledge that at some points there have been some mistakes. And I guess that's just part of the game. In terms of the team's performance last week, as you can see, not exactly great and not too much to speak about in a positive sense. But going into Gameweek 6, it does look quite strong. And I'm hoping that, I take a little upturn in form.
Okay. I mean, it was quite a bold... do you want to talk a little bit about the Palmer move? Because that was quite a bit... You're the only person I saw who sold Salah last week, where most people were captaining. So you really were going against the horde there and brought Palmer in, early, kind of, I guess, to partly fund the Haaland move this week, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So my thinking was Salah's already going in game week 6 to facilitate Haaland. So could I bring it earlier by 1 week and capitalize on what could be there in terms of upside in game week 5? And I personally thought there was. I quite like the matchup against Manchester United. I quite liked his prospects in game week 6 at home to Brighton, who I don't think have been as good as, for example, last season. And in the end, I mean, Salah only walking away with a 5-pointer. I was really looking forward to the game. But it just wasn't meant to be. I think another thing is that as aside from the tactical matchup, he looked really good against Bayern Munich and he played 90. So I assumed that he was going to be fit enough. But that just wasn't the case.
Yeah. You're unlucky with the injury, man. I mean, that's really, a real shame. I mean, I think I was going to make had the money to do the Palmer move this week, and obviously now that's off for everybody. And the prognosis is 3 to 6 weeks out, right?
3 to 6 weeks. I don't think I'll be getting him back for a while.
Right. Yeah. No, unlucky, buddy. So onwards and upwards. Bakar, how did you get on last week?
I got 48 points. It's been a bit of an underwhelming start of the season for me as well. The thing is, I had, even before the Game Week 5 deadline, I had actually resigned myself to be using the Game Week 6 wildcard, and my chip is active. So I'm actually quite looking forward to our discussion on this show because all three of us are on different strategies. Coming to my team, I felt as if there were a lot of players who needed to go, and it needed a bit of a reset, frankly speaking. For example, Wirtz has just killed my season till point, and I was just not the side of wildcarding and not having to look at him in my team is glorious in itself. And then the likes of Jorginho, Dorgu, Strand Larson, Tillemans. I mean, I felt as if there are quite a few players that I felt as if should go. And Game Week 6 is now proving to be actually quite a shift in terms of, City's favorable fixture swing. Liverpool having a relatively tricky round of fixtures in the next 2 or 3. And I see that we will see plenty of different strategies which will see diversification from the template.
Yeah, no, 48. I mean, 48 was actually probably a small green arrow, wasn't it, last week? It was actually wasn't a bad score.
It was
48.
at my rank. It was.
yeah. No, that's right. And there was plenty of scores below 40. I know that. And actually, if it wasn't for Reinders in one of the later games, I think I would have got less than 40 as well. So no, 48 is not bad. But yeah, I do see that you've got quite a few guys there that you'd want to move on, haven't you? So I normally think about, when you've got about 5 guys you're not happy with, you probably want to think about pressing the button. So I can see why you've done it. But it has been an incredibly popular move. It seems like almost everybody on Twitter and everybody in the engaged community has pressed the button this week. Perhaps it isn't as extensive as it appears, but it appears that almost all the content and all the talk is about, my wild card this week. So good luck with it. And I'm sure we'll get into the detail of it later. But let's just quickly cover mine. I was in between Jian and Bakar with the score. I didn't have a particularly good week. Obviously, Wirtz getting dropped in the first game was a bit of a shock, and he was played. And then Villa were really carrying my hopes with a favourable fixture against Sunderland. But Sunderland have turned out to be a lot better than we thought they were, haven't they? And they've started the season strongly. We've still got people targeting them in fixtures, but I think watching that Villa game against Sunderland last week, that was pretty much the last straw for me in terms of their assets. And Watkins has left my team already, so I'm not even worried about his favourable fixtures to come. I just thought he looked so off it and really didn't get many returns at all. Reinders, as I said, in the Arsenal fixture, getting a 9-pointer and getting DEFCONs was a bit of a nice surprise, and that just picked me up to be bang on the average score of 42 for last week. But my team's just gone steadily and unspectacularly downhill from about 3 million after week 1 to about 3.8 million now. So yeah, it's not great, but it is, it's where everybody seems to be, really, around 3-4 million. So I'm just a little bit more patient, I think, than some. I do have 2 Villa. I do have Wirtz. I could wildcard it, but because I've got, I'm actually going away to watch the Ryder Cup this weekend, and I don't want to be doing a wildcard on Saturday morning. So that's one of the personal reasons I haven't hit the button this week. But I am close. But I will carry on, and we'll talk about my transfers later in the show. Right, what have we got next, Scott? If we can have a look at the lie of the land. Got the fixtures on the screen here for the next 4 weeks, and that actually takes us out to, I think, almost the end of October. We've got an international break coming after the next 2 game weeks, after game week 7, and then we'll be back for game week 8, which I think is going to be a popular week for those who still have a bench boost left, perhaps, or maybe it's another wildcard window in game week 7 or game week 8 for those that still have the chip there. So guys, I'm going to come to you. I'll come to you first, Bakar. You talked about an upturn in fixtures. Obviously, that starts this week, and one of the reasons for you wildcarding. What sort of groups of fixtures really stand out for you in the coming 4 weeks?
I think Manchester City is the obvious one, which a lot seem to be targeting. Obviously the carrot being the immediate home fixture against Burnley. I mean, for example, I didn't have any City in my squad, and if I'm probably wildcarding, I'll have at least 2 and potentially even 3. So that's something that immediately stands out. And Burnley have just looked quite poor from a defensive point of view. I know I had Dubravka and Esteve over the previous few weeks, but looking at their underlying data, they're actually bottom this week for expected goals conceded, which brings me to the point. That's one of the reasons why you're potentially eyeing using the triple captaincy chip on Haaland this week if he's fit and available. But apart from that, the game week 7 fixture swing for Arsenal is another one which is worth talking about, because Arsenal had a relatively rough run of fixtures to begin with at the start of the season. But from game week 7 onwards, they're playing West Ham at home, Fulham away, Palace at home, Burnley, Sunderland. That's a very good fixture run from Arsenal from game week 7 onwards as well. And I only had Gyökeres in my team. So, these are the kind of teams I want to sort of load up on. And besides, a lot of my players were, dropping in price. Some of the players that I wanted were rising in price. So it just felt quite natural. If you can see on the graphic here, that I think I've already made like a 0.6 million benefit from just wildcarding early on Saturday. And obviously removing the likes of Wirtz, Tillemans, Strand Larson from my team was just an added bonus, I guess. I didn't even have Semenyo or some of the defensive contribution guys like Senesi and Tarkowski. So even hypothetically speaking, let's assume that Haaland is ruled out this weekend if he's not fit. I still feel as if even with that news, I would still prefer wildcarding because there were so many things that I wanted to fix in my team anyway. And then obviously once I am in a position where I am set for the upcoming weeks, I can then just save as many free transfers as I can and then build towards a more aggressive strategy in the weeks to come.
Yeah, nice. I mean, there's a lot on there, a lot of rationale on there to support the decision to go this week. There, it does seem a sensible week if your team is in a difficult state to press the button. I mean, just going back to the fixtures, if we can, Scott. I mean, Jian, for someone who's not pressed the button this week, where do you see the fixture upside in the coming 4 weeks?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I'll speak about, and just because it's probably not going to be talked about too much, is actually Arsenal's fixtures between 6 and 9. I think a lot of the upside lies in West Ham at home, and completely understandably, right? I expect them to do very well there. But outside of that, Newcastle away, very tough. I mean, Eddie has shown how good of a defensive coach he is. That man-to-man high press, that translates into that mid to deep block, which Arsenal have had struggles with in the past. And then you look at 8 and 9, and I mean, Fulham away has always been a really tough fixture for most of the big sides. Again, Marcus Silva, very good defensive coach. They've got good defensive players. Their structure's good. It's not a team that you really you're going to look to blow away by 3 or 4. And then even Palace, who have been the form side maybe for a long time now, right? Winning the FA Cup, starting the season so strongly, finishing last season so strongly. Even with Eze departing, they've recruited well. And I don't look at those fixtures and think they're absolute slam dunks, aside from West Ham at home. I would also say that, for example, between Gyökeres, Saka, Eze, Martinelli now, who may come back into the fold. I mean, Eze started in the left of midfield yesterday, which could really help Martinelli on the left. Trossard with minutes, Marino. There could be a bit of a spread of output, and you might just miss that haul. Then you've got the defenders as well from set pieces, right? So I don't think it's essential that you triple up there, because I think the fixtures are a little bit harder than the FDR may lead on.
I think that's a good point. I mean, they had the point about the different options that Arsenal have, even with Madueke getting injured. You still haven't got a nailed-on midfield there or a nailed-on forward line, have you? You've got so many options, and therefore the sort of expected minutes are making it quite difficult to make an Arsenal choice if you're using free transfers, particularly because they're so valuable. Then nailing. I mean, I have been thinking of getting Saka, but I'm not quite sure he's fully up to speed yet. So yeah, no, good point on Arsenal. What about our team, Chelsea? How do you think they're looking? Because their fixtures are about to turn on. I know Palmer's unfortunate, but what about Chelsea and upside?
So it's really interesting, right? Because we'll start with our defense, which I'm not too bullish on, and it's one of the reasons I chose Cucurella over Sanchez at the start, because I didn't fancy us to keep too many clean sheets. We're so aggressive in our style, and you'll see us a lot in some variation of the 3-1-6, which leaves us very open. And I don't think that our defense is like the most transition-proof. I think we're bailed out a lot by Caicedo, and maybe Reece's excellence at time. But with all due respect, whilst they've been decent at times, Chalobah especially, and then Tosin to a slightly lesser extent, we've been exploited there a little bit. You just consider the Schade goal, the first one against Brentford. And I do think that with Brighton's weapons, Liverpool, Forest, I'm not expecting too many clean sheets, maybe trying to get a little bit lucky. But in attack, I think all those three sides are exploitable, including Liverpool, who have been a little bit weaker in defensive transition this season. So for me, I think it's João Pedro, really solid, on penalties, has so many things going for him.
You think he's on penalties over Enzo?
Yeah, I think that game, Enzo was just getting criticised. So João Pedro was just like nice to him, and he's like, you can have it. I heard someone who was at the stadium say something similar, that he gave him the ball. But I think João Pedro will be on penalties from here on. But yeah, outside of him, I wouldn't really go a touch us. I don't mind Cucurella for a long-term fixture play, but outside there, I probably wouldn't go for too much.
Okay, cool. Anybody else stick out? I mean, you've got a couple of smaller teams up the top here. I mean, Wolves, I don't think we're going to go near them because they just keep losing. And Leeds are attracting a lot of attention. I'm sure they're going to be making up a lot of benches on wildcards this week. And, they look like they might be, good for an enabler or two.
Yeah, there's definitely been an influx of transfers for the likes of Stack and Goodmanson. I actually look at Spurs short term, and they've obviously been much better this season under Thomas Frank. Xavi Simons has got more and more minutes in his legs and more used to English football. I think he could be a very interesting option. Wolves, whilst they haven't been great at all, do have Strand Larsen back now, which is probably their best player. And getting back your best player is always going to be a big deal. So with the fixtures from 7 to 9, I could see him doing quite well and a wonderful enabler as well.
Yeah, thanks, bud. Yeah, no, there's some good points there. That's why it just sort of feels to me, although the wildcard looks really strong, we're not quite rinsed out of our starting teams yet. Now I've got 2 Spurs defenders this week. They've got a home game against Wolves. It's not like the team is just full of rubbish. We have got some potential for points here in teams that haven't been wildcarded yet. But just chopping back to your wildcard slide, Bakar. There are some great upside points you're making there, particularly on the, I think there's already been a swing of about £1 million this week, hasn't there, on price changes. And so that's really, where I'm feeling it, because I've taken drops on Wirtz, I've taken drops on Rodgers and so on and so forth. But, on the upside of it, wildcarders can't triple captain, right? So if it wasn't, and I know we'll come on to what Jian thinks of that in a minute, but there is potentially the possibility that wildcarders could get outscored this week by other chips and other teams. So whilst I don't think it's a bad week to wildcard, I don't think it's the perfect week. So any thoughts if you weren't wildcarding Bakar this week, when you would wildcard?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There are a few points I'd sort of like to add here. I think it comes down to the usage of the chip this week comes down to how healthy your squad looks. So, for example, if your squad is decimated to the extent that it is for me, then I believe that the wildcard chip is just the most powerful chip that you can use, because it has far-reaching consequences, because you can change the entire 15. I think if your squad is relatively well set up, for example, if you mentioned that you have double Spurs defense, you already have Reinders in place, and you can get to Haaland with 2 free transfers, I assume, then I believe the triple captainship is perfectly fine as well, because you don't actually have to go out of the way to wildcard this week. What I will say, though, is that the threshold for wildcarding this season, particularly with the extra chips that we have, is not as high as usual, and especially with the 5 free transfers that we're getting for AFCON later as well. So this seems like a season where, if you're at a point where if you're making, let's say, 6-7 changes in the squad, then the wildcard is probably worth it, especially in a week where the price savings are as big as we're seeing. Some of the points that you've raised regarding the fixtures are fine, but I feel as if the defensive contributions have changed the landscape as well. So, for example, the likes of Senesi, Tarkowski, they are just going to be good picks right now, and they're going to be good picks in 2 or 3 weeks' time as well. So might as well just jump on them right now when they're cheaper. Similarly with Haaland, Reinders, I think these players it's quite obvious that they're going to offer good value for an extended period of time. Semenyo as well. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of factors that actually add up, which sort of make me feel that, even if the threshold for wildcarding is not as high, if there are a few issues that you have to fix in the team, then it's possibly fine to play it. I also want to sort of reply to Jian regarding the point for Arsenal as well. I completely agree. I feel as if the fixtures for attack aren't potentially great, with the exception of West Ham, which is why I'm also actually struggling to pick between Gyökeres and Saka. But at the same time, I did not have any Arsenal defense. And of course, if I hadn't wildcarded, I would be using my free transfers to bring in Haaland. So I want to be in a position in Game Week 7 where I at least have double Arsenal defense, because the fixtures for Arsenal, we've seen that we've already kept 3 clean sheets out of 5. They've had decent underlying data. Once again, they're second for expected goals conceded this season, and have been very good for a period of time. So, just having Raya, Gabriel in place for an extended period of time as a set and forget just seems very wise. So more than the attack, I felt more compelled to actually load up on their defense on the wildcard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. No, that's fair enough. I mean, I wildcarded in Game Week 6 last year, and I think Arsenal had might have been Leicester and Southampton,
Leicester,
I think, in consecutive
And they
fixtures.
conceded.
And they conceded. There was 2-2 against Leicester. I know they conceded against Southampton after about 2 minutes. So it can go wrong, can't it? Despite what the fixtures say. I hope lightning doesn't strike in the same place at exactly the same time, but it can do, can't it?
Rich, if you allow, there's just one team that I missed out on. I want to talk about Everton as well. Now, Everton, I feel as if their attack with the signing of Dewsbury Hall and Grealish has been rejuvenated, and we've seen them over the years, especially under Dice, they've been very sort of defensive. But this season, their underlying data, and especially from an attacking point of view, is actually quite better. So someone like an Ndiaye or Grealish with their fixtures also makes sense. Everton also have a decent amount of fixtures. Obviously this week to have the home fixture against West Ham, and we know for a fact that it's very unlikely that Potter is going to get sacked before this game. So to have one or two of their players in place this week, and generally I feel as if there will be good value over the course of the season. There are a lot of options that we have. There's Tarkowski as well. And given that West Ham already conceded like 7 goals from set pieces this season, which is the highest, also conceded the highest XG from set plays, and Everton tend to do well for set pieces. There are a lot of things which sort of add up, and quite a lot of favorable fixtures to target this week.
Yeah, good point. A good point. I've never ever in 20 years of playing been keen on Everton players for a fantasy, but I think they do look slightly better than we would expectations, I would say, this year. So yeah, I'm warming to Ndiaye. I know you like Ndiaye as well, don't you, Jian? You're a big fan.
Yeah, I think Everton have been a lot better this season in attack, and I think the main reason for that is Jack Grealish. Grealish has been phenomenal so far. I mean, everything that he offers them on the pitch. Ndiaye is just a very, very good FPL option because he kind of ticks all your boxes. I mean, when they ever get a penalty, he'll be the taker. You get goals and assists from him. But I think the key thing this season as well, alongside expected minutes, is DEFCON. I mean, he's hit it in back-to-back games. He's a very unique type of winger in terms of the defensive output you'll get out of him. And he's so willing to tackle, and that's where he gets a lot of his from. So I think having that floor at his price is just so useful.
Yeah, very good. Very good. All right, so let's just change tack a little bit at this stage. Now we've stolen a slide from your daily content here, Jian. Hope you don't mind, but hope you don't mind talking to it again. It says Jian's Wildcard 13. I think we might be being a bit presumptuous there. I think you were thinking that you would wildcard in game week 13, and if you were to, then this is almost like the business case for doing that. So I'll hand over to you now, and you can frame this however you want to. But if you can present, say, the alternate strategy, playing the long game to maybe the immediacy of the game week 6 wildcard, I think that would be really useful for people.
Of course. So I'll start with looking at the wildcards now and build into 13. One thing I would say is, not in every case, but in a lot of cases, the squad strength of teams in game week 6 is actually quite good. For example, Rich, you're not wildcarding, and one of the reasons is in game week 6, like you said, your team looks quite good. So I think the immediate fix isn't necessary as such. 1 week I am looking at is game week 7, because I think it's just so awkward in terms of how the fixtures fall. I mean, United have Sunderland at home. If Villa somehow back in form, they have Burnley at home, who I actually don't think are that easy. And I don't think the promote sides are that easy, but nonetheless, they have them. Spurs have Leeds away. And there's a couple other matchups you may want to target, and maybe you want to avoid Chelsea-Liverpool because they play each other. Then going into this wildcard 13, one thing that I really considered with it is that it looks so different to what the squad would look like beforehand. If you think about the squads beforehand, for example, there's a lot of Arsenal. For Chelsea's 9 to 12, there's a lot of Chelsea, and so on. Whereas this is completely different. This is a side which will have Manchester City, where they have a hard run beforehand. Likewise with Liverpool, likewise with Brentford, and to an extent, Newcastle as well. And I just thought that this looks so different to the wildcard, the squads that are going to be formed beforehand, and the change will be so big. Whereas now, I don't think the change in the wildcard squad between the current squad and your new squad is actually as big. And I thought there was a bigger opportunity to gain here. And the strategy was to go with this for Game Week 13, which looks really good, right? I mean, all you have to do is look at the fixtures on screen for Gvardiol, for Brentford, for City, for Liverpool, and for Bournemouth as well. And then in free hit 14, the reason for this is City don't have that easy of a game. They have Fulham, I'm quite sure. Brentford don't have that easy of a game. And you'd essentially be able to get off them whilst getting on other teams who have good fixtures. For example, Palace. You'd be able to have Salah for 14. It's very difficult to fit him and Haaland in, I think, at any point in the season. Hence why I've gone for the cover of Isak, which is very solid, and maybe hard to have in a wildcard structure beforehand when you're going to have Gyökeres and maybe Saka and double Arsenal defense. And then the run from 13 to 19 for these teams is just so strong. I mean, just look up top what Liverpool have in 18-19, and then likewise with City. So that was the line of thinking. It allows for a good bench boost in 16, and then the triple captain can be played whenever.
Yeah, I mean, it's just my initial reaction to this is that those three teams do, look like they have fantastic fixtures, in the I guess the end of the second quarter of the season, but it just seems so far away, to be considering it right now. And if we're waiting that long to use the two most powerful chips, are we going to be ranked 10 million then? And when everybody else has used wildcard, bench boost, triple captain, and we've got wildcards and free hits in pocket. I like it, and I haven't written off getting there, but it seems like it's gonna be really difficult to get there, and maybe easier to get there if you've had a better start, I guess, because there's always that thing in all our minds that I've dropped too low. As the season wears on, it's going to be harder to rise quickly. But I mean, if I'm going to challenge it, I mean, would you really have 3 Brentford? This far out? I think you're trying to illustrate a point that there's an upswing here, and they have good games, but triple Brentford, they've looked okay, but they don't look that convincing to me. But yeah, for City, Liverpool, and Newcastle, who are still a bit of a work in progress, I guess it does look really strong. And certainly it's not game over if you don't wildcard in 6 or 7, is it? So
So one thing with this is with the triple Brentford is it actually rotates quite nicely. For example, Livramento and Collins. So I'd be just looking to optimize the fixtures there. But yeah, for sure, like Dango doesn't have to be here. Him and Rice could be rejigged, for example. There's a little bit of money in the bank. You could downgrade elsewhere. There's definitely like alternative solutions to this wildcard. One thing I did look at in this video as well was just how my team would fare between let's say 6 and 12, and it actually looked okay, which is one reason why I was a little bit more inclined to still go for this strategy. I'm a little bit more open to not doing so now, just given how 7 and 8 might line up. But I would say that 6 to 12 still looks relatively okay, all things considering.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thoughts on this, Bakar?
Yeah, I mean, 13 is a window which I've actually potentially earmarked as one of my free hit windows as well. And as you can see, there are a few teams, like you mentioned, Newcastle, Brentford, who you would obviously hesitate to load up on the wildcard. But if their fixture was favorable for 1 week, then I would feel more comfortable having, let's say, double Brentford or double triple Newcastle on a free hit as opposed to a wildcard. So I feel as if that's a week where I would potentially favor the free hit over the wildcard. Besides also the fact that you're now getting to a stage where you actually have to sort of make some gains, not only in terms of team value but also in terms of jumping on the fixture swings. Also, another point that I'd sort of like to earmark is that in the graphic shown here, it was mentioned that bench boost 16 would possibly be a strategy that would be undertaken. I feel as if there's quite a big gap between 13 and 16. If you're wildcarding in 13, you ideally want to bench boost quicker. That's something what I'm potentially looking to do with my team as well, because if you're setting yourself up for a wildcard, you ideally want to be in a position where you don't actually have to use any other free transfers for the bench boost. And that's potentially why I'm considering setting myself up for a bench boost in 7 as opposed to 8 or 9 as well, because 8 is after an international break and who knows what can happen by that time. And that's something that I'm always very skeptical of.
So one thing, right. I apologize. I wasn't looking to make a transfer between 14, 15, 16 with that. I was looking just to roll. And then 16, obviously, I get given the 5 frees as well, just so it has like a little bit of protection in case I need to.
Yeah, no, good points. The bench sport is proving hard to. I wanted to use it last week in Gameweek 5, but because of my Ismail Assar injury, and had I gone for it and last week used it, I'd used another free transfer, sold Sarr probably for Paqueta if I was going to get anyone. I'd have scored 3 points on bench boost with the Sanchez sending off and 1 point for Van der Ven and so on. So yeah, that would have been pretty disappointing if I'd bench boosted. But Bakar does make a good point, and hopefully he'll be back with us in a sec. So good points there, mate. I do like it. I do like it as an upswing, and I don't know, but I just don't know if I'll get there. I think my team might be creaking by game week 8, and I might have to press the button there. But I think I'm going to be going somewhere between the two. Somewhere between the 2 points. But I hope that's been useful for our viewers. And, if I just welcome people from the chat, I haven't said hello to people in there. We've got Storm, we've got Joseph Robinson, we've got John Thomas, we've got Museka Pogo, we've got Info Surge. Welcome, everybody. And thanks very much for your points today. Cedric Levy, Justin Phillips, Andrew Pugh. Welcome to everybody. And thanks for joining. What have we got next? Let's talk about triple captain. Before I talk about why I'm going to potentially triple captain, I know you had some content out earlier this week, Jian, about why you think triple captain is not a great idea this week, and maybe you could, apart from the flag, which is obvious, but why do you think it's not such a good idea?
Yeah, sure. So I don't think it's a bad idea by any sense. I'm just not sure it's completely optimal. I think in an ideal world, what you'd want is to always play it on a mid for the simple fact that on the assumption you have the same likelihood of goals and assists, they're always going to have a higher ceiling, right? 1 extra point for a goal. And you'd be hoping when you're triple captaining someone, they're certainly going to participate in that category, whether it be once or twice. And then obviously the point for a clean sheet. And if you're playing it against the side, you're going to kind of assume that the opposition probably doesn't have the best attack. And you gain from that as well. And then maybe, and if you're going for like a Bruno Fernandes, which I think is acceptable at some points, you get DEFCON as well, right? Mm-hmm. There's maybe like anywhere between 2 to 5 points you could gain over a forward. So that's something, and it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but when it's on offer, I would like to take it. And that's just mainly the only argument that I have. And I'm just hoping that in the remaining 13 weeks that follow, excluding the ones where I use chips, so let's say 10, there will come a time where either Salah or Palmer or Saka or Bruno or even Semenyo in this form present themselves as an option, a really good option for just 1 week, even if it's not a fixture that looks like a standout on paper. The matchup is just so good, and I'm able to go there and outscore Erling. And the fact that he's got a flag and they have Monaco away 4 days after, maybe he gets like a 75th minute hook again. And that benefits me. Look, at the end of the day, still the most informed player in the league at home with one of the easiest fixtures. So it's not bad.
Yeah, no, those are good points. I mean, whereas the bench boost, we were just talking about how hard it is to use and how difficult it is to use, and they're both underwhelming chips, right, in terms of the, what we think of them and how we can get a lot of variance with them. But the triple captain chip is one of the easier chips to use, and you can use it in game week 19 if you want, and just throw it on Salah or throw it on Haaland because it's still there. But I think it's a decent week. I think given Haaland's form, given almost all of the Man City goals are coming through him at the moment, the matchup with Burnley in terms of their expected goals conceded, I think, Scott, if you just move it on a slide, we've got some rationale here about why we might want a triple captain. That's way too small for me to read, but yeah, it's basically if you look at the Rob T projections for this fixture, I think it's 2.69 goals for Man City this week, and I think that ranks quite considerably down the list with many fixtures that took place last season. So all these 24-25 fixtures that took place whereby the predicted goals were higher, mainly Liverpool, Arsenal and City fixtures, it's still a decent projection of 2.76 goals in a match at this stage, given the the amount of clean sheets that we've had this season, and this season has tended to be a little bit lower scoring than previous years. I still fancy it to have enough goal upside to play, and the real reason I think I need to play it is just because of the feeling that everybody else has wildcarded this week, and that we're going to take non-wildcarders are going to take another slamming. So it's going to be like I think when game week 4, the wildcarders outscored the non-wildcarders by about 15 to 20 points on average, I think. So the impact of that on rank, if you're not playing a chip, I think can be considerable. So I know that's a bit of a subjective reason to play it, but I just fancy it. And I think if you just fancy it, then do it, because it's one of the things that doesn't really need to be overthought that much, and I think it will lead to a little bit of rivalry across the game between wildcarders and non-wildcarders. So they want Haaland to do well, but perhaps not too well. What do you think on triple captain, Bakar?
Yeah, I think if I had your team, I would do it because your team looks in reasonable shape. It's healthy. If Haaland is fit tomorrow, then I think by all means go for it because the fixture is there. The alternatives, I guess, are maybe to wait for, let's say, Liverpool versus Sunderland game week 14. That could be a fixture for Salah right before the African Cup of Nations that you can target. But now that you have the opportunity, you can go for it because who knows, by game week 14, you might want to use, let's say, some other chip at that point. If the opportunity is presenting itself, then I don't feel as if the triple captain chip is one which is worth overthinking that much because essentially it's one extra player that you're getting over the field anyway. Because if it's a player like Haaland at home to Burnley, it's very obvious that the field will captain him. So it's just one extra player that you're getting, and if the opportunity is there, just take it. My main concern is that I see quite a lot of people who are prioritizing using the the triple captain chip over the wildcard or the free hit while their squad is in poor shape. That's something doesn't sit right with me because I feel as if the other two chips, the wildcard or the free hit, are just far more powerful than the triple captain. If your team requires it, you should absolutely look at activating one of those two chips rather than the triple captain.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, you've got to have a fit squad, haven't you? And if you've got flags all over the place or players that are at risk of being dropped, then you certainly need to deal with those first. Yeah, agreed. Okay, well, I will await Pep's press conference tomorrow then, assuming we're getting another one. I don't know if we are after the Carling Cup or whatever it's called now. So
we are.
All right.
We are.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to just a quick summary of transfer targets. If you haven't already made your transfers and brought in Haaland this week, who obviously has to be in the centre here because he dominates the captaincy, he dominates the one of the main rationale for wildcarding. Who else are we bringing in to enable that move? I mean, maybe I can start on the left hand side here. Got a couple of picks where perhaps viewers need to make an either or choice this week over bringing them in. Let's assume everyone's already got Semenyo, or Semenyo we could include in here, but he's so highly owned I didn't include him this week. Certainly the two that I'm not sure whether to go for are Saka or Bruno. Now, I know that from an analytics perspective, Bruno is the number one name on the team sheet for anyone using models and anyone using solvers and that kind of thing. But would you go Bruno over Saka or Saka over Bruno, Bakar, if you were me?
I mean, I think you know the answer. I'd go with Fernandes. Every day of the week, you're actually in a very reasonable position where you can afford both Haaland and Bruno because for the vast majority of the field, it's a solid downgrade to a cheaper mid, and let's say someone like, for example, Mateta or Evan Nelson to Haaland. So a lot of people are looking at, the NDI types or the Reinders type. I personally feel as if you're looking for that sort of enabler, then Reinders probably is the best one to go for, given the fixture. And not just this week, even the next 2 or 3 weeks for City are actually quite good. And even though Reinders' numbers, they're not exactly great, he just is giving you a very cheap, affordable entry into a very potent attack. So I would probably prioritize him as part of that enabling move to Haaland. But if you're wealthy or rich enough to be like yourself, then yeah, why not Fernandes? I think Fernandes should be a staple in pretty much every team given what he offers. He would have been on 3 double-digit hauls had it not been for the penalty miss against Fulham earlier on in the season.
Yeah, well, I'm actually thinking of getting one of those two to replace Wirtz, so that would be for a hit, and I might still do it, this week. So it's I'm unsure whether it's worth a -4 or whether I should just wait a week and then take the hit next week and get 2 Arsenal players. That's the dilemma. But then I won't have Bruno for Sunderland, so there's always a downside to these things. And Bruno's through his harder fixtures now. He did look fantastic against Chelsea. He's an unbelievable player. He's just surrounded by the rest of the team who are nowhere near as good as him. And that's what puts me off a little bit. But yeah, I can understand why he's going to become very popular in the next in the next week or two. What do you think of those two, Jian? Who would you go for out of the two of them?
I echo many of Bakar's thoughts. I would also go for Bruno Fernandes. I think if you look at the next two well, maybe the next four as a combination of fixtures, a set. I think Bruno's got the better set for at least for getting attacking returns. I would say with him as well, you cover all bases, including DEFCON, which is a wonderful floor raiser for something like himself. I'd say the one thing is just Manchester United overall. I mean, do you completely trust them? For example, that Brentford game, I think you could see it going any way, right? Like, you'd see United, especially with Cunha back, having a really good performance, and Brentford, for example, just coming off the back of conceding fair few goals. But at the same time, then with United, you don't completely trust them. You could see them struggling. You expect Brentford to go 5-3-2 again and make it somewhat difficult for them at least. So I don't completely trust them. But with all his routes to points and the floor, I would also go Bruno Fernandes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, as Bakar says, a lot of us may not have the luxury of being able to do that if we're trying to enable Haaland. So there's a couple of cheaper options and a couple of more punty options on the right-hand side. You know, Phil Foden, if you want to triple up, if you've already got Reinders in your team, which many people have. Foden played most of a game. Did he play a full 90? 77. Okay. So he played on Wednesday in the EFL Cup. I think the thoughts are he's probably still likely to start against Burnley, but there's always that slight risk that he'll get a random benching. That's the issue with Foden. But 8 million, cheaper than Fernandes, way cheaper than Saka. Foden, if you want to go for the triple up, and that should give you enough money if you're selling Salah to upgrade one of the mid-price forwards to Haaland. So I do like the Foden pick, and I can see it working for some, and you will be getting something of a differential with that. And then your favourite guy and Die also makes the slide this week if you want a 6.5 and need the extra cash. So any other guys that you would include in this list? Forget Semenyo. We know he's great, but who else would you put up as a candidate here in the midfield?
I think you've got all bases covered. Like, if I look at the players I'm looking at, you've got quite literally everyone covered. For me, it'll be a toss-up between like a Bruno or a Foden or a Reinders. But outside of that, especially when you have Bruno and Foden on this slide, with the fixtures they've got coming up and Foden's form, I think he's got something so unique in the sense that he can haul so big. And we've seen this in the past, right? When he slams those hat tricks in, and he's done it a fair few times, or even just the braces. He's so unique in that sense. And I think it's a wonderful differential to be able to go, especially when he's already in form. And he got taken off early in the Arsenal game as well. There's no like-for-like replacement in the squad because Cherky's injured. So I think for the next three, it's a really good opportunity.
Good. Thanks, Jian. Anyone else, Bakar, for you to worth mentioning?
I think most spaces are covered.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's have a quick look at the total predicted points over the next 4 weeks in line with what we showed on the fixtures. No real surprises here. Haaland and Salah still up the top. Quite surprised that Salah is only just over a point behind Haaland here. Semenyo comes in third with 24.5 per predicted points, and then we've got the darling that is Bruno Fernandes. Probably the biggest laugh below that is Watkins. Watkins comes in fifth in this list in terms of predicted points. Does that surprise you, either of you, that he's still so high in terms of the expected returns? I mean, it must just be the next two fixtures, right? But that definitely seems a bit high to me. Pedro's there. Maybe that's the penalties. Foden, we've just talked about. Foden ahead of Gyökeres. Anybody here on this chart stick out? We've got a few defenders in here. Chalobah, Tosin, Gabriel starting to creep onto the chart.
I think what interests me is Saka over Gyökeres. Now that's a decision that I'm weighing up on my wildcard, and I'm sort of not unsure as to which way I go. And even though there's like a 0.8 million price difference between the two, I feel as if it's quite a tricky decision, especially after seeing Saka get 63 minutes in midweek. I feel as if he's probably fine to start the weekend and play most games from now on in. So that becomes quite a tricky decision, I think, and it's quite interesting to see the algorithm think that Saka's going to get slightly more points.
I would say for me personally, someone who's usually the talk of the town, and you probably discuss him in every Green Arrow episode except this one, is Mohamed Salah, right? Because we've obviously all sold him, but he's still the king of FPL. And I think the Palace fixture is really hard for anyone. They just look so good in so many departments. But after that, whilst on the FDR, there's a lot of red and grey. I think Chelsea, United, stylistically could all be good for him. He's also the best Big Six player we've ever seen. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him kick up again. One other thing is against Everton, it was the best set of right-hand side dynamics Slot had given Salah. And I think you saw that through the performance as well. I thought I was a little bit lucky to get away with only Salah getting a 5-pointer. Yeah. So, I can see him actually doing quite well following Gameweek 6. And even in 6, like, he's Salah, right? He can just always pop up with a moment.
He did phenomenally well following Gameweek 6 last year. As someone who was on a Haaland-only strategy between Gameweek 6 and Gameweek 12, I think he put up 100 points of difference, and they had exactly the same expected goal returns between the two of them, and Salah beat Haaland by 100 points. That was one of the most crazy swings I think we'll ever remember. I don't want to be on the wrong side of that again. So thank God I got. He was wildcard back to it, I guess. But it's going to be could well be the case. He hasn't exactly done badly. He's just started sort of averagely, hasn't he? 4 returns in 5 weeks? It's not bad, is it? But it's just not the crazy stuff that he normally does. So all right,
it's mainly the fact, Rich, that it's some of the returns have appeared to be jamming to the average viewer. There are a lot of returns that have come either through penalties or either in the last few minutes of the game, which is why it looks as if he's been very sort of lucky in some of his returns. And while Haaland has been returning really well, I think he's had 6 goals already. So I think that's where it comes from. As someone on a wildcard, I feel I've looked at Haaland, Salah, Josh, but because I want to set myself up for the bench boost, potentially having Salah and Haaland both does sort of limit the balance of the team a bit too much. And while I'm looking for squad depth, I probably just have to get rid of one of the two. And obviously, Haaland is a bit of a must if he's fit.
Yep. Yeah, fair. Okay. All right. So if you are wildcarding this week, then and you want to not take any notice of anything that all three of us are saying, and you just want to let the Hub's AI predict a wildcard team for you, we have it on screen now, and I'll read it out for the benefit of our podcast listeners. The best wildcard 6 team, according to Fantasy Football Hub's AI, is Raya in goal, Vardiol, Romero at the back, Gabriel, a midfield of Semenyo, Bruno Fernandes, Reinders and Anderson of Forest, and a forward line of Haaland. Ollie Watkins retains his place, João Pedro, and a bench of Dubravka, Minte, Richards and Alderete, who is the new flavour of the month from Sunderland. So what do you think of that, Jian? Any surprises there that you see?
Couple surprises, but honestly, overall, I quite like it, and I'm not just saying that. Maybe someone you haven't seen in many wildcard drafts at the moment is Elliot Anderson. But even when he hasn't got DEFCON, I think pretty much every game he's hit 11. So in that category, he's been great. But the other big thing with him is, if you look at how Ange's played him in the Europa League game, different position, more attacking, and at that price with his quality, he could come gold. So I think that's a really interesting pick, one that's going under the radar. The fact you also have Minter in there, who's certainly got the capability to return somewhat consistently. Hall, maybe not so much, but definitely return. It's quite nice as an option, right, to have that depth. If you look at Haaland, JP, Reinders, Bruno, Semenyo, Gvardiol, Raya, Gabriel, that's all, and Richard, that's all very basic and solid. Yeah. Romero is an interesting pick, but I think it's a good one again. I mean, Spurs have looked good. He's looked like a threat from set pieces. Their set pieces look way better, and they've got good fixtures in the short term. So yeah, honestly, I like it. I think there's something to be said about Ollie Watkins. I don't think you need to gamble here, considering the price and the form, especially when there's no Arsenal attack, right? So easy route into Gyökeres. Yeah. But apart from that, I think it's very good.
Yeah, no, thank you. Any thoughts on this, Bakar? I mean, obviously you may consider one or two of these for your own team, but yours, we'll come on to yours in a minute when we do the team reveals at the end. But quite different to your setup, isn't it? At the moment, I've seen your team.
Yeah, I feel as if the main difference that I see between this team and mine is the fact that it hasn't actually gone crazy on some of the defensive contribution players that I've gone with in my wildcard team. So the likes of Tarkowski, Anderson, Senesi. I mean, these players have had defensive contributions in minimum 4 out of 5 games this season, and that's something maybe I think the algorithm will become accustomed to over a larger sample size. While it feels to me that it's this sort of accumulation of defensive contribution points on these players is quite sustainable. And it just feels as if they're going to start on like 4 points, a floor of 4 points every week, which is like just too good to pass up.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Actually, yes, it looks a bit old school in terms of the defenders, doesn't it? It's gone for the sort of the clean sheets and Gabriel and the attacking promise of Gvardiol and Gabriel. Yeah, definitely, it's lacking a few DEFCON monsters. I certainly wouldn't have Watkins in there after owning him for the first 5 weeks. I'd be getting rid of him certainly on a wild card. He might make a free hit, but I don't know. Have we got the free hit next, Scott? I think it's coming. Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the season on all our Game Week 1 content, most people were saying they were looking to free hit in Game Week 6 because it was a difficult week to navigate with upping your City assets, covering that Burnley fixture, etc. Now, there is a very different team if you were to free hit this week using the AI. You suddenly have 3 Chelsea players coming onto the agenda. You've got Chalobah and Tosin that are selected ahead of Cucurella, which is quite interesting. You've got a couple of Spurs assets because they're home to Wolves, so Vicario makes it into the goal. You do retain Fernandes and Semenyo, but Foden, Reinders and Haaland mean that they're really going for it on the free hit with the City front line. Watkins makes the free hit, as I said, I thought he might, and then Pedro is there as well. So free hit looks different. I mean, do you know anyone who's still free hitting? I thought Ben might be, but it seems to have just completely fallen off the radar from the content perspective this week, hasn't it?
Yeah, I haven't seen a single person, literally a single person on the timeline on it, which is extremely rare considering, or at least very surprising considering the talk preseason, like you said. The team's interesting. I'd say it's a tale of two halves. The attack I really like. I think it has a lot of bases covered. Maybe I have a few preferences. No Watkins, maybe even no Bruno for this fixture. The rest are like. The defense, not so much. I'm not super confident in us keeping a clean sheet at home to Brighton. And Wolves have obviously got Strand Larsen back. They've got a new striker as well. Looks good. They had a couple chances against Wolves as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs lose theirs.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, we'll move on. We won't spend too much time. Rich Against the Machine. This is a new feature for this this year where I try and find a pick, try and find some value in a player that maybe subjectively has a better chance than the AI is predicting. It's 2-1 to the machine at the moment. And my picks tend to get injured after I pick them. So last week I picked Madueke and he got injured. The previous week I picked Sarr, who at least did exceed he did get a goal, so he beat the machine. But now he's been injured as well. So for the 3rd week running, I hope I don't curse Bukayo Saka, who is my pick for this week, who's on 4.1 predicted points away to Newcastle. I thought that was quite low. I think he's pretty certain to start the game due to the Madueke injury. I know it's a tough fixture away, but I do fancy him. He looked really good certainly in his league game last week when he came on against City. And so he's my pick. He is a premium, and I'm hoping that I can make it 2-2 between myself and the machine in Game Week 6. Right, very quickly while Bakar rejoins us, not proposing we spend a huge amount of time discussing the best Game Week 6 captain. I mean, do you have any thoughts on alternative captains to go in Haaland? Jian, I'll come to you first. And also, who would be your vice captain given the back trouble?
Yeah, not really. I haven't given it too much thought. I think if Prep says that he's a doubt, then I'll start to give it more so. And if he does, I'll look at Semenyo for the fixture. I'll also look at Foden for the fixture and the form. Well, you could say the same with Semenyo. Probably those two. I don't think I'd go anywhere outside of that. Yeah, probably Semenyo, Foden. But if Haaland's fit, I think it's a fairly easy choice. The only thing you could consider is maybe he gets an early hook, and then maybe you want to go Foden for 90. That's something to consider, and I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. No. But yeah, one a Semenyo or Foden, I would say.
Okay. Thoughts? Who you vice captaining in Bakar?
I think if Haaland, let's say if he was unavailable tomorrow, if there was any risk, or we heard a team league before the deadline, he was out. I think Fernandes or Foden for me would be highest in consideration. Foden potentially might play false 9. I would have thought if Haaland was to miss out. Vice captain would be Fernandes, I think, because I don't think I'll be picking Foden on the wildcard team. So Haaland captain, Bruno vice captain.
Cool. Thank you. Right, let's have a quick look at the fixtures. These are the Rob T graphics that we see on a lot of content. They seem to be becoming the de facto standard for predicting the goals and the clean sheets across the game. Nice, concise graphics. So thanks to Rob and also Solio, who sponsor. Thoughts here? I mean, this is better than last week, isn't it? Last week was pretty dull, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There wasn't much blue or orange on the slide. We've got City, the clear standout fixture with a 49% clean sheet chance, 2.76 predicted goals. You have to come all the way down to Spurs against Wolves, where you've got just over 2 goals predicted, but still a 41% clean sheet chance. So I like my 2 Spurs boys starting the game there. And then you've got reasonable scores for Chelsea against Brighton, 1.85, and Liverpool are only down at 1.73 away to Palace. I guess that's a respect for Palace being unbeaten in about 16 matches. So thoughts here on these? You see any upside elsewhere?
I think quite clearly City versus Burnley is the one to target. Apart from that, let's say if I was in a free hit, and there are 2 or 3 other fixtures that I would look at, potentially Forest versus Sunderland. But even then, I wouldn't be too sure about minutes for some of the Forest attackers. So that's potentially tricky to predict. Spurs versus Wolves is one that sort of stands out in terms of the bookies odds and in terms of free hit as well. The thing with Spurs is that I'm actually struggling to pick anyone from Spurs on the wild card, because with Porro, he's already played a lot of minutes. He played in midweek as well, and there hasn't been this quote from Thomas Frank where he mentioned that they have 3 fit fullbacks and they'll all rotate with each other. So I'm always worried about Porro's minutes, especially from this point onwards when Champions League is going to come into play. But if you're on a free hit, I feel as if you can take the risk. Porro's more of a 90 or 0 guy, and Richarlison as well is someone I could potentially consider on a free hit as opposed to a wild card, especially looking at some of these odds. Apart from this, I think Everton versus West Ham is one where the goal projections, especially for Everton, are quite high up. So potentially having one Everton attacker, irrespective of the chip you're using, seems to be like a wise move.
Yeah, no, nice one. The Everton good fixture for Tarkowski as well, isn't it? If he's on your wild card, yeah, I like that. We haven't talked much about Chris Wood. If you had Chris Wood, would you be worried this week? I mean, I think their other alternative guy scored twice, didn't he, last night?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Igor.
Igor. Yeah. Go on, go Jian.
Yeah. Igor Jesus scored a brace against Swansea, then he scored a brace against Real Betis. And the other thing is, it's not just the goals. He actually looks really good as well. Even his cameo against Burnley, I watched the entirety of it, and I thought he looked very effective and dangerous. So as a Chris Wood owner myself, I'm looking to sell him. Like I have no interest in playing the expected minutes game with Igor Jesus knocking on the door. And I'm not even sure that Wood starts, right? And he hasn't been so great for a little while now. So he's my route into Haaland with the cash. And yeah, I think you can definitely be selling him, because if it's not this week, I think he'll be the week after or the week after. It's a ticking time bomb with him. The only other thing I'd say is I think Bournemouth are a little bit low. Considering they're on 10 points with their quality, I'd say 1.37 is a little bit low for them. Yeah,
nice. No, I agree. No, decent set of fixtures. I think it'll be a higher scoring week than last week. And looking forward to some of those matchups. Although I don't think I'll be watching much of it because of the Ryder Cup. But there we are.
I just wanted to add a bit more on the Wood point. There was this quote from Ange which suggested that he picked Igor Jesus for the game because he wanted his striker to run in behind, and he sort of mentioned in the quote that there's nothing that Chris Wood has done wrong. It's just the fixture that he's trying to play. And you can potentially argue that Sunderland at home would probably just sit back and would be a bit of a deep block for Wood to exploit. So looking at the fixture from a tactical point of view, even though Igor Jesus has scored a brace, he might still prefer Wood. So it's quite a tricky one. I feel as if, but irrespective, I feel as if his time is up after this game. I just don't feel the need to sort of hang on to him, especially given that the fixtures are turning.
Yeah, I think Fergie's still got him. He triple captained him the other week, isn't he? So if you are watching Fergie, time to get rid, maybe. All right, let's move on to our teams and transfers for this week. Jian, what are you going to do with Palmer? How are you going to get Haaland in? And are you going to make any other radical moves, mate?
No radical moves this week. What I do, I'm not entirely sure, is probably looking like Palmer without Haaland Rangers in. I think that's probably what I'll do. Phil Foden's kind of calling my name, though. The only thing is, if I do go there, I don't have the money to go Gakpo to Bruno next week, which is a move I'd really like to make. I could even go Bruno this week alongside Haaland. But again, I think I'd want an extra City mid. worst comes to worst, if like for whatever reason, let's say Haaland's out, right, and it's looking like Wood gets benched, and I just sell Palmer for mid, I can always play Kirkes instead of Wood, and go 4-4-2. So those are my like 3 options. I think they're all pretty solid, and that's what I'll be doing.
Excellent. No, very good. And that's that going to be for a -4?
If it's 2 frees, then yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's 2 transfers. Yeah. So that just in terms of your recommended transfers from the Hub AI, I think it just need to zoom in on that for a second. It's recommending you sell. Who's that in the middle? Does it say sell Semenyo? No,
it's Palmer and Evan Nielsen.
Evan Nielsen. It recommends you sell Evan Nielsen over Wood. Okay. And Palmer to Reinders. Yeah, he agrees with the Reinders, but he reckons. So what, you going to keep Evan Nielsen? You're just going to bin Chris Wood because of the expected minutes, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. And I think Evan Nielsen's got a really good fixture as well, so happy to keep him.
Okay, cool. All right, now here's to have the big reveal then. So Bakar, you have the floor here. Please talk us through your wild card. It's looked pretty nailed. I did watch your video with Jack as well. It hasn't changed much from there, has it? So talk us through your 15 and, any rationale as to why.
Yes, I've gone with Raya in goal. I mentioned how good Arsenal's fixtures are from this point onwards, and Raya for practically the significant majority of the season just seems like a nice set and forget. Dubravka obviously picks himself as well as the backup. I've loaded up on the defensive contribution guys, like I mentioned, Senesi, Tarkowski, Anderson. Doubled up on the Arsenal defense with Gabriel. The 5th defender is still something that is up for debate, and it's something that I might sort of choose to upgrade if I decide to go with a different structure, releasing some of the funds from, let's say, my attack. In midfield, NDI, Semenyo, Fernandez, Reinders is pretty standard, and up front I've gone with João Pedro, Gyökeres, and Haaland. It feels like a very template draft, which I'm not too bothered with, because even though I've had a relatively poor start of the season, I still feel as if I want to pick a team which gives me the highest amount of points in the weeks to come. And this team just looks very, very solid on paper. So while I'm sort of playing around with, a couple of different structures, let's say I mentioned the 5th defender to someone like Guardiola by downgrading an attacker, or maybe going for a Saka over a Gyökeres variation of this draft, the core of the team, or the spine of the team, will pretty much remain the same, I feel. And I'll probably then look for a bench boost in Gameweek 7 as well, because I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm sort of sweating over the international break for the health of my players.
Okay. No, I mean, it looks very strong. My initial reaction is there isn't any weakness in it. You probably wouldn't need to make a defensive transfer for ages using this, would you? So you could just literally concentrate on keeping it injury free, I guess, through the coming weeks. So yeah, I mean, I really like it. I think it's one of the strongest ones. It is. They're obviously full of players that we talk about week in, week out, which is probably why it looks like a template, but it's very strong. What do you think of it, Jian?
I think it's very, very, very solid. I mean, if you just look at that front line, you've got penalties across all the front 3, plus Njai, maybe even Semenyo, definitely Bruno. You've got some DEFCON in there with Semenyo, Njai, Bruno. You've got DEFCON across the entire defense, good clean sheet prospects, a lot of depth. And like you said, no need to spend transfers on defenders, really. So you can just rotate those attackers to attack fixtures. I think it's great.
Yeah. Who've Leeds got in Gameweek 7?
Spurs.
That's why I'm a bit reluctant to pick Goodmanson if I'm bench boosting in 7. I actually have 4.4 million for a defender currently, as in this draft has 0.4 million in the bank. So if, for example, Van Hecke falls in price, which he's expected to over the next 1 or 2 days, then maybe I can upgrade Goodmanson to Van Hecke, and Van Hecke has Wolves in Gameweek 7, which is a good fixture. That's something I can potentially do, which is obviously contingent on the price changes.
Yeah. No, but Stack looked decent. He looked great. The ideal sort of first bencher, didn't he? He looked great last week. Yeah. Very good, mate. Very good. I think that's one of the best ones I've seen this week. Really like it. So there you go, folks. If you want a nice, easy wildcard draft, it's on the screen now. All right. So back to my team, I think, finally. And strangely enough, I have already made my transfers this week. I did it on Sunday night due to a couple of price changes that were going through, and also plummeting values in my own team. So Salah left the team for Semenyo. I'm late on Semenyo, but it just seemed the logical one to go for, given that was a big exposure for me. And I just haven't really been lucky with Semenyo. I bought him in game week 38, Jian. Do you remember when we were together watching the games?
Yeah.
And I benched him because I was waiting for Saka news. Saka never started the game or came on as a sub for 1 point, and I left 16 of Semenyo's points on the bench in game week 38. So, and I've missed all his goals in early season, but he's finally come back into the team, and I just think he's a solid pick. And that gave me the money to upgrade Watkins to Haaland. I know there's an argument that I could have kept Watkins for another couple of fixtures, but I was done with him. I still have Rodgers. I think Rodgers plays tonight, and he really looks off it as well. So I think my decision this week is whether to start two of Rodgers, Wirtz, or Sarr, because Sarr is someone that I've had sat injured for a couple of weeks. He is supposed to be training this week, and hopefully will play. Who would you bench out of Wirtz, Rodgers, and Sarr, guys?
I think Sarr, because the fixture is the toughest and his minutes are the most uncertain.
Yeah, because he could be just introduced from the bench, right? He could just come on from the bench. Yeah, I've probably got that right then. Yeah, I've got my Spurs boys. I've got Sanchez. Hopefully he's going to play. He's not suspended because he missed the EFL Cup game for Chelsea. And again, I'm not sure whether to play Anderson away at Villa, who's probably got a decent chance of a clean sheet there, given the lack of productivity for Villa, or whether to go Munoz against Liverpool. I'm a bit torn between those two. Again, who would you play? It's marginal, isn't it? It's a difficult one.
You could consider like playing Anderson and Sarr. Let's just say, for example, Glasner says he's fit to start. I think stylistically, pretty decent matchup. I mean, Liverpool's weakness has been defensive transitions. There's not many better players to exploit that than Sarr. And you give yourself the upside to Wirtz for the fact that, like, you know, you're not playing an attacker against defender. And Villa have been so poor that, you know, with Anderson, you get DEFCON maybe and clean sheet potential. So I think that maximizes upside. And even from a football perspective, maybe could be quite solid.
Yeah.
I'd play Anderson over Munoz as well because of that floor of the defensive contributions and the outside chance of a clean sheet.
Okay, now good advice, guys. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, would you say that's good enough, right? You don't think that's worth a hit, that team, for Fernandes?
Probably not. I could see Bruno doing well, but I could also see him doing bad. So yeah, probably not. Maybe if it was Sunderland at home, but I'd probably just roll with how it is.
Okay. Yeah. Wirtz should start because of the Ekatike sending off, shouldn't he? I would think.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like at some point he has to come good. I mean, he's too good not to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, great. Thanks for that advice. All right. So Scott, is that it? I think we're done. My goodness me, we've reached the end of the slides. So that is it for us this week. Thanks ever so much to everyone who joined in the chat, and those who watch it back, and those who listen on the podcast version. Your support is very much appreciated. My Twitter handle is @Rich Clarke FPL on Twitter and Blue Sky. Where can we reach you, Jian?
You can reach me at FPL GMBatra on both X and YouTube. And if I can say one thing, if we can give some love to Rich in the chat, first time hosting, I think it did a great job. So I think a bit of love in the chat.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Bakar, where can we reach you?
Yeah, firstly, well done, Rich, on having us and on a great stream. I think you did an excellent job. You can find me BigManBakar, BigManBakar on X and Instagram.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, guys. Much appreciated. Great debate between three of us on all the strategies. So this podcast and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel with podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watched, please press the like button and remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right corner of the screen. And if you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. We'll be back next week looking ahead to Game Week 7. Fergie will be back from Portugal. In the meantime, have a fantastic Game Week 6, and I've saved this right to the end. And may all your arrows be green. Good night, everybody.